All systems go. Cleared for takeoff.
What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, a.k.a. ToeTagginTambo. We're back on the SHIPIT Nation station here on the witching hour, ready to talk some baseball. Got my guy boomersdaddy with me. Shorter slate, and it's set up a little bit differently. Of course, the site split it up, so we'll talk about that here in a second. But FanDuel starts at, I believe, 6:05 Eastern, so they have the Phillies-Tigers game. The other four games are on that slate, of course, but then on DraftKings, you're going over is a four-game slate with the remaining games. So, Boomer, bring you in, man. Without further ado, we always like to get right to it. I got a little housekeeping, but I'll bring you in first. How you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Just watching Alex Cobb get hit around a little bit and, kind of enjoying it just from the pure baseball aspect of being a Rockies fan.
Happy to get the course slate out of the way early today, right? We don't have to focus on it tonight.
Yeah, that's the good thing about Thursdays when they're home. You get it out of the way early. You don't have to worry about it. And how about my boy Chase Anderson absolutely dealing again?
Mm-hmm. Yep, back on it again. That's a good thing. We got all the stuff over there. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit for those that don't know. Obviously, Boomer, he's our wizard. He runs everything in the back end. He's got the projections, the tools set up, all that. There is some conflicting stuff today. So that's the fun in it. I love it for the game theory. I use it to build all my lineups. Some close calls. Last night, we had a membership, the Minimax on DraftKings. Shout out to our guy there, Kevlar87. He shipped it for, I believe, $2,500 for first. Said it was his first takedown, so that's huge. He shipped it. I'd love to see that. And then I had, I think, 4th, 6th, 12th in the FanDuel $65 3-max. I was up there with all three, just used the tools. I had about 15 minutes last night, went through and put it all together. Love what we got over here, Boomer. So we'll talk more on that when we get through it. Little bit of housekeeping up top before we get into it. We have the time today because it's a smaller slate, but first off, we are about to cross 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're just joining us, do us a favor. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, but also got to make the announcement because we told you U.S. Open week, which is next week for golf, or 1,000 subscribers, whichever comes first, we are giving away an annual membership to SHIPITNation.com. The thing is, we're not quite there. I know we're going to cross it on this show. We're at around 985 subscribers. We're going to cross the 1,000, but to get in that draw, there was extra ballots along the way, but the main thing you have to do is go to our welcome video under videos. It's my mug there talking about the site. You go underneath, you can write any comment you want, but the main thing is you have to have the hashtag SHIPIT down below. That's where the winner's going to come from. The draw, you still have time. So if you're watching this later, whatever it is, you have time to get in it. Hoop and our guy Title are going to be on this channel tomorrow with our always free MMA show. We have MMA now. That's something that got added. So all the founding family members that have come in, just another sport that you get. So we've got MMA rolled out. It is up on the site, some of the stuff, not all the stuff for UFC 289 yet, but we will have the core report. We'll have the tier rankings. The core report is breaking it down. Title's going to have his favorite core on DK, his second favorite, his cash game stuff, FanDuel stuff as well. Tier rankings, breaking down the tiers of the fighters. His full slate plan, breaking down each fight, who he's overweight, underweight, all those factors on. And then if you do go to the site, you can go right now, SHIPITNation.com, click slate info. That's kind of a free cheat sheet that we put out there. It's got the 11 fights. It's got their pricing for DK. FanDuel's not out yet. It's got the odds. Any fight that has the inside the distance odds, so not going to the judges, is up there. And then all the weight of the fighters. So then you can tell their class and everything from there is already up for you guys. But again, if you want to get in on that draw, head on over there. Adding Title, just a huge, huge thing for the site. We've got, more coverage now. We've got MMA. We're going to be rolling out in the best ball streets for NFL. And then it'll help us out with MLB, NBA, NFL, of course, other sports along the way. Boomer, anything else you want to add, man, before we get into this slate? We do have one game we got to talk about early on here, starting things off.
No, just make sure you guys like and subscribe over there on YouTube. Let's get to that 1,000 members by the end of the show. It's been an absolute huge push, and I know I can speak for the rest of the staff over here. It's 3 weeks now, going on almost a month, and the outreach and support has been absolutely phenomenal. And I did not imagine this when we started this, and I'm absolutely blown away every single day, and it's amazing. So
amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
So far. Yeah, definitely appreciate everybody, and we'll get into it here. It is the last week to sign up for the Founding Family offer. So for those that don't know that, we've got already guaranteed. It's basically $6,000 in free rolls. So $3,000 at the 6-month mark, another $3,000 at the 1-year mark. Everything else that comes out, like we'll have tons of giveaways during NFL that are Founding Family members only. So we did the math on it a couple days ago. It looks like it's going to be around $10,000. So at least $10,000 and more once we get through it all. But let's dive in. We'll do some more of that later. Right now, Phillies, Tigers, Boomer. And it is important because one, like I said, it's on the FanDuel slate. Two, I think we're going to talk about Zach Wheeler, who leads our pitcher rankings today. Give us your thoughts on this one here, and then we'll go through the rest. You know, I'm always giving out the extra tidbits. People can come check it out if they want to get the rest. But talk to me about this game, Phillies, Tigers.
Well, I on FanDuel anyways, because the game's there, I am basically playing 100% Zach Wheeler. Mm-hmm. I can't get off of them. The Tigers right now, their lineup that's out is approaching 30% on their K rate. Zach Wheeler has all the qualifications for what I consider my blue man group. He meets every single stat line. His xERA is good. He's actually, the results have been a little bit worse than what he's able to control, but he's got the best matchup on the slate, facing the highest strikeout total. Like, it's just everything checks the box that you want to have when it comes to a guy that you're paying almost $11K for. He might not strike. It might not be as flashy as Spencer Strider, and he might not be as consistent as Strider has been this year. But when it comes to guys, I would put 100% on a MLB slate. This is about as close as it could get. It's like a 1A, 1B for me, but Zach Wheeler is that 1A.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I also think it is at least interesting. Again, people always say, well, of course he's going to be owned. We know this. Everybody sees this stuff. Sure. But when you have the other factors, like, again, I'll just go to our pitcher rankings. You still have Spencer Strider there, who, again, they're going to split it up a little bit. But what that does, and I talk about this in PGA DFS all the time, as long as it keeps the guy we want in check, like you said, you can get your leverage that you want to go get. And again, I said, when I'm on these shows, I don't mind giving away some of the stuff. We've got some incredible tools that you can look at over on the site. If we get to, I don't know, what's the likes at right now? Can you see the likes?
Last time I saw it was at 37.
Okay, if we get to 100 likes at the end, I'm going to give away some of the top hitter rankings. I'll give away some more from that, but maybe that can help with some one-offs, things like that. But just to give away a couple things right now, I don't mind looking through it. The Tigers, the worst in our stack prediction, no secret. But then when you tie it together with the other side of things, Strider a little bit down our board versus Zach Wheeler, and then you go look and see across the industry that it still looks like Strider's at least pulling some ownership, then that's fine for me to get in on Zach Wheeler. So on FanDuel, I couldn't agree with you more. We'll talk about the bats separately later. We're going to go to pitchers on DraftKings in a second, Boomer. But because this game is the early one, let's get it out of the way completely. Talk to me about the bats here. I think it's only going to be the Phillies side for me. Probably the same for you. Give me your thoughts on the Phillies side first off.
Yeah, it's only going to be Phillies for me today. I mean, if you wanted to go against the chalk on FanDuel, I guess you could play nobody. No. Try to find somewhere else to get chalky, or to get off the chalk. For the Phillies, for me, it's those top 4 bats. It's Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, and Turner. Schwarber is and those that have been following me for a while kind of know, Schwarber is extremely hard to fade in June in the leadoff spot. I don't know what it is. It started a couple years ago, but he just absolutely goes nuts in the leadoff spot, and he loves hitting in June. He's got a freaking 348 xISO. He's still going to strike out, but like the Phillies won the other night, and the only run that they scored was a leadoff home run from Kyle Schwarber. I mean, it's really, really hard to fade. He's only $3,000 on FanDuel. Bryce Harper is sitting there at 3,600 on FanDuel. I know it's left on left, I know it's kind of a bullpen game for the Tigers, but these are two guys that are just absolutely mashing the ball, and I am all over them. As a mini stack, you can throw in Trey Turner or Nick Castellanos. But those top four are my main focus on FanDuel for hitters.
Yeah, I like that call. I was telling you earlier, land on a one-off, maybe if you want to play. It's, again, I think people still struggle with like lefty-lefty. If you land on Bryce Harper, I think they're just going to click Mike Trout at the same $3,600 because he's righty versus lefty. Obviously, he's in a good spot. Everything looks good there. But just a note from our guy Parabase, I hope that smoke don't ruin this Philly game. Yeah, something to keep an eye on. We talked in the Discord earlier. Some of the news out there is that it could drop to certain levels, and you got to keep an eye on it. In-game showers, things like that. Watch it. We always say that, wait and see approach, but we have to talk about that one first, just because the fact it's on the FanDuel slate and not on the DraftKings, so you won't have to worry about it over on the DK slate. Let's go to pitchers though. Boomer, we got another set to talk about here. We'll stick with pitcher and then we'll go game by game for the hitters, but I'm looking at our pitcher rankings. You can go through it. It's a 4-game slate. You can just really tell me who are the pitchers that are standing out to you on DraftKings and why. And then we'll break it down from there. And I will bring up one interesting point at the end, I think, at least that the members wanted to know, that we can let the public know about as well. But just go into your thoughts at pitcher here today.
Yeah, it's going to start with Spencer Strider. He's expensive. He's $12K on DraftKings. He's going to be still really, really highly owned because he can go out and strike out 10+ guys. And let's face it, the Mets are just not hitting right now. And they're going to be without, they are without Pete Alonso tonight, who took a pitch in the first inning off the hand from Charlie Morton. So he's out of the lineup. But I know the K percentage doesn't look good on the starting lineups page for the Mets, but when you get an elite strikeout guy like Spencer Strider, who has said, my goal is to go out and strike out everybody with 3 pitches every single time they step in the box. I don't know how you can actually get away from this unless you just want to take a different approach and try to load up on some bats. But Spencer Strider is my top guy on DraftKings tonight in the 4-game slate.
Yeah, he looks really good, and I'll bring this up because I was going to bring it up for the original game anyway. Like I said, again, keep an eye on the weather, that sort of stuff. But the other thing about the Phillies, so I said about some of our tools, and because it's one game, give it away. But like we've got Zach Wheeler at the top. Sorry, the Tigers are by far our worst, and then on our advanced starting lineups data, you can go in and see like X ISO, X WOBA, all these other stats. The Tigers are just horrible. So again, this is not new information. People can go find this stuff out. I'm just saying, when you have it in front of you like this is what makes it easy. And we talk on our site about building easily competitive lineups to just make me commit to this regardless of ownership. Now, if you go to the other side of things, and now I'll relay it to the Spencer Strider point on DraftKings, that's where you want to get your exposure, because it's almost the same thing, right? Boomer, we go look, you go to your stack rankings, the Mets, just as bad as the Tigers. Strider, he's pretty much up our pitcher rankings board. And then you go look at the Mets. The only thing I'll say that's different from the Mets to the Tigers that we talked about earlier is I think you could get away with a one-off. And I'm not sure exactly who you'd want to go with, but I'm just saying, like, if Jeff McNeil or if somebody that you wanted to plug in as a one-off, and if you're not playing Strider, I'm saying they do have some of those stats that pop a little bit or a lot more than some of the stats for the Tigers, where there's absolutely nothing going for them, and why I feel fully strong about putting them in on Zach Wheeler, in on FanDuel. So just a note on that. What about some of these other pitchers here? We've got Berrios is the one that sort of the members had brought up when you were talking pre-show with me about, is Houston obviously rates out incredibly well today with the bats, yet Berrios is popping in our rankings. What are your thoughts on him? And just bring that sort of conversation to the forefront.
Yeah, Berrios overall has actually looked a lot better. He's looked the best that he's ever looked in a Jays uniform. And he pitches pretty good in the Rogers Center. I'm assuming that with all the fires and stuff, that roof is going to be closed again, which makes it more of a pitcher's park, but let's not get it confused. It's still a hitter's park. Houston is not an easy lineup to kind of navigate. I compare Houston and the Braves, kind of that 1A type of guy, or type of lineup where they actually make you work top to bottom. Yeah, they might strike out. Yeah, they might not put up a bunch of runs, but they're going to make a pitcher work. And we saw that with the Braves the other night with Max Scherzer. He was kind of cruising, and all of a sudden a couple of soft hits, and, it ended up kind of snowballing on him. And I think that is one of the reasons why I can't fully go in on Berrios. I like his salary. 8,800 is nice to pair with Strider in tournaments, but I would much, much rather play Houston bats, even though they're expensive, than I would Jose Berrios in a majority of my lineups.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I think that's, probably the safest thing, because going against Houston always feels tough. But I will say this is the other nice thing about our advanced data page. And we're going to do more tutorials on this stuff in the future just to break it down. But it's basically lefty, righty, and home road splits, right, from the season. Mm-hmm. And then you get the sample size. You get the at-bats right there. We're talking into the 80s, almost 100 at-bats for some of these Astros. The K rates of Pena and then going down from Abreu down to the bottom are huge. And then Berrios still projects okay and then pops in our pitcher rankings. I tend to lean to that, and here's why. You know what you're going up against. You're going up against Yordong, and you're going up against Tucker. If those guys bomb it off you, it's not the greatest look, and how many guys are on base when it happens, and so on and so forth, and what affects you in the scoring. But to bring it up, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these guys are over 20% K rate, and 5 of them are over 30. So that's what we show in the advanced data. It shows you they're on anywhere from 60 to 100 at bats. To me, it's not the greatest sample, but it's better than some of the other spots where it's 15 at bats or 9 at bats. So I really do think there's at least something interesting to it. Is it scary? Absolutely. Like you said, going up against these Astro bats in this park can still make it happen. They still have a good team total, all of that, but he's just one that I would bring up. I've had great success over these last couple of weeks using just these pitcher rankings, and especially on a short slate where I think people lean elsewhere. Where do you think people end up, Boomer? We'll end on this at pitchers. I don't know if you have anything on Smiley or Savali or Verlander, those guys, but Reed Detmers?
Reed Detmers?
Yes, he's the other guy that I was looking at because he's popping here. He has a good little price tag on him, and then I'm not seeing much else, but your thoughts on him, because I think people are wanting to make that work to make Strider fit in.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are either going to have Spencer Strider or Framber Valdez as their top pitcher. Framber is more of a ground ball pitcher. He's not a huge strikeout guy, although he can get them. But with those two guys, I mean, you're talking about what, $1,900 difference between the two? Wait, $1,600 difference between the two. Sorry. A lot of people are going to go down to the bottom, and they're going to go to Reed Detmers, who against the Cubs, a Cubs team that I'll actually touch on here in just a minute. I personally would rather flow over to Aaron Savali. The upside might not be there as much, but I don't fear the matchup quite as much. But it's each one of them has warts. It's really hard to kind of. Boston doesn't hit the same on the road that they do at home. Mm-hmm. Chicago's not the greatest road team either, although they have been putting together better at bats. But when you're talking about going out and grabbing 13 to 16 DK points, you can probably make a case for a guy that's $1,300 cheaper, and Reed Detmers is probably going to get a lot of that ownership being paired with Spencer Strider.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's the guy I looked at just pre-show when I was messing around with some lineups and putting them in. But now when you go and look at some of this stuff, well, he does pop up to the top of that. That's also a product of the slate. There's only 4 pitchers behind him on the pitcher ranks. It's a small slate. So then people say, but Savali's way down at the bottom. The difference is, though, is between him and Smiley. Like, Smiley's only $500 more, but I would still try and find it. I think you're going to be able to get different with bats elsewhere. If you go to our stack rankings, the Red Sox are way down. If you go to the Red Sox number, it's a team total under 4. And then on top of it, then, like I said, you get all the data on the page. They also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys with a K rate, 5 at least 25% or more. And that's, again, on 60 to 70 at bats. So I actually think that's more interesting. And I think Savali could come in at 20%, 15 to 20%, even though it's a short slate, versus it looks like Detmers will be able to get no problem because of the price tag. Everyone's going to want to upgrade their bats and do that. So I actually like that call quite a bit. Any other pitchers you want to talk about before we get into the batters and go game by game?
Not really. There's one thing I do want to point out with Jose Barrios and Aaron Savali. These two guys have a huge, okay, so Savali's ERA is a 2.04 and Jose Barrios is 3.66. Both of their xERAs are over 4.4, which means that there's some regression coming soon. A lot of the quality of contact, the batted ball data kind of suggests that they've got some tougher innings or games coming to them. So if you're looking at a guy like Savali who could end up like getting a lot of ownership just based on his price tag, or Barrios at all, then it's not a bad idea to look at that number and actually go the other way into some bats.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like Savali, that's an awful call. Looks at it from more of this one. Boston doesn't K. Again, our sheet is set up for this. This is a tournament call. We're on a short slate. I'm not in the cash game streets. I'm looking to win large field tournaments. We just talked through it completely, but just to show you, like I said, again, going to our sheet, it's just, you're wrong. The math is right there. Duran, he has 55 at bats. He Ks 33% of the time on this handedness in a home road split. Go to Cassis, almost 30% of the time. McGuire, 33% of the time. Kike, K's almost 30% of the time in this spot. It's the exact stats. There's no way to go against it. It's the numbers. Again, what you're probably looking at is not set up with the splits. And that's the difference. Lefty, righty splits, home road splits, and then you bring in short slate and game theory. It's the math. How did Bibi do? One game. Exactly. Like, you're going off of a one game stat. Even this sample size isn't incredible. I'm just going off the numbers we have. I'm just saying what you're comparing. And it's not to argue with you as much as to make everybody understand this. This is perfect for a 4-game slate on DraftKings. I don't care if I'm right. He can get shelled for 4 home runs tonight. Stack the bats against it. Maybe in MME I will. I'm trying to explain when you can actually see the data and use it to your advantage. This is how it happens. People told us Senga was a horrible call the night he was number 1 in our pitcher rankings and broke the slate and put up almost 40 as the number 1 pitcher on the slate. People were not in love with 10% owned, whatever the cheap guy was for Arizona or Colorado that game. And he goes out and breaks the slate and literally is the number 1 raw point scorer. This is a 4-game slate. I'm not too worried about good calls, awful calls. I'm taking stands where I can try and find a way to get different. And in this spot, the data still does back it up. And that's what we're trying to do here. Show people to build their own process, to find their way through it. It is not going to go. It's baseball. There's 162 games in the season. That's a lot of DFS slates. You're looking for angles and you're trying to find game theory and ways in. Anybody just joining us, do us a favor on the way in, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. We talked about it up top. We're going to get to these next 3 games in a second, but just to go through it, 4 games, sorry, but just to go through it, if you haven't yet subscribed, at 1,000 subscribers, we're giving away an annual membership, $599 value. You get everything on the site for that price. In this case, you're getting it for free. So if you want to sign up, that ends on Monday. It's noted on the site. Price go up. The founding family offer goes away, $59 a month or $599 for the year, which the $599, by the way, gets you back to our original starting price. The $49 a month is what we started at. That's how you lock that in. So you can still get that price that way and still be a founding family member. But let's move on, Boomer. Let's go to these bats. Astros versus Blue Jays. Talk us through this first game.
Okay, so for the Astros, it's really simple. It's the middle of this lineup here. I want Altuve, Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker. Jose Altuve has had a lot of success against Jose Barrios. Barrios has actually been worse versus right-handed pitching in Rogers Center than he has left-handed pitching this year. One of the biggest things is he's got a 355 xWOBA with a 254 x ISO versus right-handed batters in the Rogers Center. It's one of those things where I would rather take my big bats and stack them up with the middle of this lineup than I would actually trying to get cute here. The Astros are more of a mini stack for me tonight, but it's just because like on FanDuel, I can play Altuve, Alvarez, and Bregman, and get out of there for relatively cheap, considering Bregman's still only 3,100. So
yeah, the prices are really good on FanDuel too, like you mentioned.
Yeah, they are
top of the order. Like you can get these guys in there, no problem. Alvarez becomes a little bit tough, but not specifically. Just if you're going on FanDuel with Wheeler, tougher. But on DraftKings, again, you can fit this stack in. But I still like you said, the mini stack a little bit better. Are you doing anything here with the Jays at all on the other side against Valdez?
Yeah, it's hard because Valdez has got a really, really like his average launch angle is like a 3. So he gets a lot of ground balls. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys, which is fine. But the Jays aren't really a team that produces a lot of it. And it's so weird. This is an offensive ballpark, and it actually got more offensive in the offseason because they made some adjustments to it. But outside of Bo Bichette and Matt Chapman, they're not really producing a lot at home in terms of power and damage. George Springer still hasn't quite got going yet. They don't strike out a ton, but it's one of those things like they've stacked this lineup for right-handed bats, but I don't have a ton of interest in them either.
Okay. Yeah, and this is one of those spots too where maybe it's not that, again, we didn't talk a lot about Framber, but if you look at it from that perspective, if you're not super high on the Jays and you ended up there, I wouldn't have a problem with that either. Like if you landed on him, let's say for whatever reason, or you're setting your lineup up a little bit differently, it's really tough to do a Strider Valdez lineup. Again, you can probably find it out there. People will have it tonight. If you're using the solver and you're going through on MME, you can set it up that way and see what some of those stacked lineups look like. You just lock those two pitchers, turn on the stacks, and then you're able to see how comfortable do you really feel about that. You probably need some cheap one-offs and things like that. It doesn't look very good.
It's not pretty.
Yeah, and sorry, just to quickly say, but that's where I was saying earlier, I prefer Strider on DraftKings, going back to it. But I'm talking DraftKings here. If you couldn't get to him and you needed to have Valdez and you already have likely no Jays in your lineup in that spot, that's where I was saying if you wanted to get a Jeff McNeil or something like that, or a Lindor or something into your lineup, I'm then okay with the one-off because you're kind of doubling up on the leverage spot. Not something you have to do, just something that I'm looking at when I'm building those lineups. And when I see it, at least still makes sense from a game theory perspective for your tournaments. Not much else for me here. I agree with you on the Houston side. I agree with you on the Jays side too. Really, I don't really have anything on the Jays side that I'm in love with. I just want to see one thing. The only thing that at least is a little bit intriguing, like I said, is Framber is down on our pitcher ranking some, but even going through it, it might be just Matt Chapman. Actually, just was looking at it here to go back and I'll see it again. Yeah, Matt Chapman, Bichette, one-offs, same reason. Again, if you got a Strider with a Barrios or something, maybe you got Barrios with one as a pitcher and one of his bats in Bichette or in Chapman. I actually have no problem with that if you want to utilize that in the shortstop or third baseman spot. Those would be the one-offs that I like there. Let's move on, Boomer. Let's go to this Red Sox Guardians game. We talked about Savali on that side pitching. What are we doing here with the bats? We've got the confirmed lineups for both sides in this one.
It's not pretty. Obviously, Jose Ramirez is always in play. I really actually do like Josh Naylor over at DraftKings. He's only 3,400. And he's actually been hitting the ball pretty well. He's got a 211 xWOBA. He's not striking out a ton. He's got a 0.99 WOBA diff in the positive. So there's some big games coming in here. Outside of that, the Guardians team, I'm looking at stolen bases. I'm looking at guys like Ahmed Rosario, Steven Kwan, that if they do get on base, they can actually steal a little bit. It's not pretty. Josh Bell has actually started to kind of come along a little bit, but this could end up being a bullpen game for the Red Sox. So I want him from the left side. His first at bat, maybe first two at bats aren't going to be from the left side. So I'm probably not going to be there. For me, it's Ramirez, Naylor, maybe some Miles Straw, but it's not a ton of stackability as far as a primary stack for me tonight.
Okay.
On the other side, I mean, we've talked about it. You could always play Yoshida. He doesn't strike out a ton. But other than that, Devers, Tristan Cassis are both smoking the ball right now. If you want to take a shot and you don't have Savali and you're going all the way down to Reed Detmers, I don't mind them as a little mini stack either. So,
yeah. And what was I going to say here? Two things quick. I'm going to redeem myself with our guy Sean V for 2 seconds. But just if he said, again, if you don't want to play Savali, I was given the reasons why it would make sense on this slate and how I'm seeing it from our data and tools. But what I'm saying is, to Boomer's point, Yoshida looks good on our stuff. Turner is usually, if I recall correctly from his Dodgers days, Boomer, pretty good righty. He's still fine when it comes to that. So he would make some sense for me there. And then Devers, obviously Devers, has the perfect matchup. So if you wanted to do that, you could do it. Maybe in your case, Sean B, back to our guy in the chat, he was talking about, that Strider is definitely getting hit here, which we'll get to that game in just 1 second. If you wanted to go Berrios and somebody else, or maybe a Berrios Frambeer matchup where they're both going at each other in that game and it ends up being that way, you could then play those Red Sox with another stack and get different that way. But using just those three, Yoshida, Turner, Devers, Cassis is cheap. Like I said, he strikes out a bunch, but if not, he would fit within the mix in that mold as well. He's very cheap, 2,700, hitting in the 5-hole there. So don't hate that. On the Guardian side, I know our guy Hoop likes this stack today, and this is one that you could set up as well where pricing is fair going up against the Red Sox. But real quick, our guy said, I think he was looking at it. Yeah, you're not going to find that. There's no way to put that. Yeah, Jay Steele was bringing it up. This is for a member. Something else. Would we be able to separate our slates and stacks for pitchers? It's very clear on the sites. It's very clear in your optimizer. It's out there everywhere. The reason it's up that way on the site, like myself, I'm playing both. I want to know where Wheeler rates out against the other 4 games. So we have that up, but our guy Boomer, who's here with me and can clarify, that will go away the minute that game locks, or not the second, but shortly thereafter, where then it becomes just the setup for everybody else. So it does need to be that way. Everybody needs to have access to know where their guy stands versus the other. If you're playing on DK, again, your lineup in front of you, if you're hand building, your optimizer will have it set up that guy's not in there, so you won't have to worry about it anyway. So just one of those things. There's no way around that. We try and make it as easy as we can for everybody, but definitely the reason why it is set up that way. On the Guardian side, last thing, and then we can go to the next one, just some of the guys. You mentioned Naylor. It still does kind of look like a mini stack, hey? Like you could set it up. The only reason, I guess, Boomer, to go to that would probably be because you want to set up a cheaper contrarian stack that allows you to fit Strider and some of the other stuff, and then maybe somewhere else that you end up on the other side. But anything else you can see on the Guardians? If not, we can move to the Mets and Braves.
Yeah, that's pretty much it on the Guardians.
All right, let's move on. Strider being the big conversation piece. I've already sort of made my case on this spot. I don't mind taking some of these matchups against him as a one-off if he's not in the lineup. Again, he's going to be in a majority lineup, so I think that's kind of where people will struggle with it. But if you landed, again, they don't even actually project that well on our advanced data, but I'm just saying if you landed on a Nemo, a McNeil, a Lindor, something like that, I would not fault you for it because it's just a one-off. And if you're not playing Strider, it at least makes sense that you could land there, but it's not something I would force. It's not something I'm going to be high on, just bringing up if you wanted to go there. But we should definitely talk about these Braves. Let's talk about these Braves bats, Boomer.
Yeah, Verlander is interesting. And the reason I say that is he's got a positive ERA diff. He's definitely not looked like himself so far this year since coming off the IL. I knew it was going to take a couple starts. I mean, he's 40 years old. He's got he's older. But he's been getting hit, especially in Citi Field. Sorry, I was about to call it Chase Field. To right-handed batters, he's got a 215 xISO with almost a 94 mile per hour exit velocity. And the left-handed batters, it's a 228 xISO. So it's not like he's been a soft contact guy. Now the average exit velocity is always up there with him because of how hard he throws, but it's just command inside the zone for me. And it hasn't quite been there like we've seen it lately. I'm not really sure outside of, I mean, these Braves haven't had a ton of success against him, but the one guy that has is Matt Olson, and he's just absolutely crushing right-handed pitching at home this season. I'm probably going to have some Braves, but it's not as comfortable. Nothing is comfortable on this slate. Let's just put it that way. There's not a Dodgers on this slate where we know that they're going to go out and put up 6 runs. There's not a Giants on this slate where everybody's going to fall to them against like a Chase Anderson. Nothing is comfortable on this slate, even when we get to the next game. And that's one of the biggest areas that I haven't been able to build a 5-man stack that I really like on DraftKings today.
Yeah, I want to see what the lineups look like later, but I think the last game has some 5-mans that I could be interested in. But yeah, for this one, the Braves, it's just that it's expensive. But we talk about this all the time. I don't do a million baseball shows, but obviously on hosting and going through it, using the data for myself, playing daily. I think one of the biggest things for me this has helped with using these tools and seeing them, Boomer, is like, if I set it up on my stuff, I can say, okay, if everyone's on Strider and I understand why, and that makes sense, maybe some of the bats go with that, right? And maybe it's only a 3-man in this spot. And then you got to use something like the Angels, the Cubs, Guardians. You got to go a little bit different to find your other side. But you can also go 4-3-1 and get that one off in there. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. But the thing about these bats, all these Braves really even, they have big sample size in this spot. I get that it's Verlander, but then you look at it, Acuna, Olson, Riley, d'Arnaud. There's all these options. Even Rosario, Ozuna types, Harris, they're popping a lot more than some of these players on these other teams as still the worst on the Braves. And I know they're the number one stack. I know they got the highest total, all that. I'm saying it's, again, you can get different within this stack. Michael Harris, Ozuna at the bottom with a wraparound that doesn't include Acuna because he's the guy that would make the most sense, pops the most, projects the best, all of that, strikes out the least, everything. But I'm just saying instead you can go like that and mix it up at the bottom, get to Olson, Riley, maybe d'Arnaud. That's where you'd have to play with it. But I definitely think that's the way you could get different by doing that and just leaving Acuna out. Obviously, Olson's going to be popular, but man, it looks like it's for very, very good reason today. So probably one of those guys you just want to have. Let's go to this last game, though. If nothing else there, we got the Cubs, the Angels. Do we have the lineups yet? I don't think so, right? Still waiting?
We don't.
Okay.
Unless they've already come out. Nope. They haven't come out yet.
No, nothing yet. Go ahead. You can take us through this one first.
Yeah, let's start with the Angels side. Obviously, we all know that Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout are in play. Anthony Rendon scares me every time I play him because I'm afraid he's going to get hurt nowadays. But Joe Adell should be in the lineup. He's not going to be or he actually was just added on FanDuel. He was. So he is spanking 2,500 on FanDuel, and he's 2,500 on DK. He's probably going to hit in the middle of that lineup. He's been absolutely crushing in AAA. I don't mind going there against Drew Smyly. I'm expecting the only left-handed bat in this Angels lineup is going to be Shohei Ohtani, and you can honestly make a case for, if you want, because the Angels are going to be popular. So are the Cubs. You can make a case for fading the top 4 guys and just going Drury, Adele, Urshela, Wallach, and Nito, if that's the way that the lineup kind of shakes out, because it's going to be different. It's going to get you that low ownership. It's going to get you the uniqueness. If you're pairing Reed Detmers and Spencer Strider together, and it's not a bad stat, and it's really affordable. Like 4 of those 5 guys that I just named off are under 3K, and it's, if you want to skip one and throw a Shohei or a Mike Trout in there, then that's fine. But I'm not sure exactly how much you're going to be able to do that. And not have to drop to the bottom of the barrel and go with like I don't even think we have anybody that's 2K today on the slate.
It's not.
It doesn't look like it. So, I mean, Will Brennan's $2,200. Maybe going. That game's not on the DK slate. Yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, you could go Cam Gallagher at 2K, but I think that you're going to end up having to make a decision between one or the other. And then if you want to stack the Angels in a 5-man stack, you're going to have to scrape down to the bottom of this lineup.
Yeah, I just think that's the thing. And we only have the projected lineup right now, but when you see guys like Taylor Ward is 3,400, you see Chad Wallach at the bottom is 2,900, Nito's 26. I think people are going to find a way to make it work if they trust Drury or Rendon. And then, of course, you've got Mike Trout there. So it just looks to me like that's going to be the popular side. I know you've got a little bit of love for the Cubs, or at least I think you do in this spot. And with, like we talked about, Detmers being the 6,500 and the world can kind of get to him there if they want to. What did our guy Sean just post up now? He says 2.7 ERA, innings 1-3, then an 8 ERA in innings 4-6. So he's looking at the stats too. That's the thing. The Cubs here at least look appetizing from that perspective. I'm just not sure. And in our stuff, they look pretty good. You go pull it up. It's like there's plays there, man. So what are you doing with the Cubs side here?
Well, I really want them to roll out this double catcher lineup that we've got projected with Yan Gomes and Miguel Amaya. I love Amaya's talent. He hits the ball hard. And on DK, you're going to have to make the choice. I would rather go with Yan Gomes because nobody's going to play him, even though he's going to be in the middle of that lineup because he's $3,000 compared to the $2,400. But like I would agree with Sean on this one. Reed Detmers starts off the game like a bat out of hell, and then he struggles the second to third time through the lineup to get through it right now. And it's really, really difficult. This Angels bullpen is not something I'm scared of. I'm not saying that they're going to put up 10 runs, but they are the team that I would feel the most comfortable 5-man stacking tonight.
Yeah, and it looks good, and it looks really easy to do when you talk about it from that perspective. Again, it's almost the same thing the other way, right? You got all these righties in there, even Hap, the switch hitter. You got all this stuff on our advanced data. Again, smaller sample on some of the guys, but at least solid across the board. Some of them down with their strikeouts, stuff like that. You can get to the bottom of the order. You talked about it, but again, we'll see what it actually comes out like. But Mancini, Amaya, Wisdom, Morel, there's lots of guys that you could go to here and then wrap it around up top. So I think that's the way to do it. You can still get your Strider play in there if you want to go and spend up. You can mix and match with some of those cheaper mid-tier pitchers that we talked about since you're not on Detmers in that example. So I think that's another way that you could go about it. On the other side, like I said, it's that the guys that I mentioned originally. We'll see what it comes out like. But Wallach, Nito, Ward, Trout, Rendon. If you want to go to Drury, you'll get a couple different positions, multi-position eligibility. So I don't know. I don't have too much more on this spot. I think the Cubs side is definitely more interesting, but that's how I would round it up. Boomer, anything else on this game or anything else you want to add for this slate before we get to the dongs of the day and then the play of the day at pitcher?
Yeah, for the Cubs, I'm wrapping them and I'm skipping Nico Horner. Okay. That's just it's. I'm not saying you have to, but I like Wisdom, Morel, Swanson combo as like a 3-man stack. And then I'll be playing Yan Gomes and Trey Mancini as well. But that's kind of how I'm doing it. Like Christopher Morel was the first person I put in the lineup. Mm-hmm. The second one was Yan Gomes. Now we'll obviously have to see, but like I'm not afraid to play the bottom of this lineup for the Cubs because I think that they're the ones that they might not do the damage, but they're probably the ones that are going to start the carousel going.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with this too from just combining with the pitchers. Like I said, if you go a 4 or 5, man, like you mentioned, if it's Amaya, let's say it is Amaya, Wisdom, Morel, Skip, go to Swanson. Mm-hmm. Now you can fit a lot of you can get your pitchers in there, and then it's wherever you choose to land, whether you want to go to the Braves, whether you want to game stack it with the Angels on the other side, whether you want to go to that little mini Red Sox stack that we talked about if you were mentioning it earlier. So, or you want to get some of the pesky Astros in there if you're not playing Barrios or any of those ways. The Cubs really do open that up. And again, I'm not sure where most will go, but like it seems like the Cubs, the Guardians, kind of the two, and the Angels will be the more popular of them, but the Cubs going against a popular cheap pitcher, and then the Guardians could be sort of the two that you could make that work. And then we talked through the 3-mans and all these other places that you could get to. So I think that's kind of how it will set up. Make your decision on Strider and then go from there. Jay Steele, man, he's a big, I know his other logo and stuff has the Mets in it. He's completely against. He says 5-man Mets, baby, let's go.
That's one of those that you put in the like a single bullet in the $10 or the $8, and you let it ride. You throw in the 5-man stack, you fade Spencer Strider, and you've got the double leverage on a short slate, which is, I mean, Hoop and I talked about it the other day when I was on with them. You've got that double leverage going, and you've got some fandom going, which is never a bad thing. And then you kind of fill in the rest of the lineup and you sit back. And if it works out your way, you're going to be one of like 15 guys that are sitting there at the top, just like lighting up their cigars at the end of the night.
I always like to go even crazier and double down, but I would just game stack it at that point. I would just say, let's get the whole game stack in there. I believe it's some of the better hitting weather on the slate anyway. People were mentioning it earlier and the temps up and things like that. So I could definitely see it. If you're doing it, just commit to it fully. Hope the game shoots out and you get something 12-11 or something like that. And then whatever pitchers you land on, I mean, you can't go to the other one. So you know you're not getting Strider. So you just land on whatever else you get, make the combinations work. There's definitely something there. So that'd be an interesting lineup to build out. Again, see what the Mets do, but you would definitely have a big setup there. And then if you're playing more lineups and wanted to actually go against Strider, it'd be an ownership thing. Like I said, it doesn't work for me with the FanDuel slate with Zach Wheeler. I see no reason to do that. But if you wanted to do it in good hitting weather and you think they're going to get to him and all that, that would be the one that you could definitely take a shot with there. Anything else at all, Boomer, before we get out of here that you want to talk about? If not, give us your pitcher play of the day and then give us your dong of the day. Who do you got for a home run tonight?
Okay, so my dong of the night is actually going to let's see here. Put me on the spot. I forgot we did this. We're going to go left on left. We were talking about him before the show. We're going to go Bryce Harper. 386 X ISO, 416 X WOBA. It's a left on left matchup. I don't think anybody's going to have him, especially on FanDuel slate. So I'm going to stick right there, and I'm going to go with Bryce Harper. If you want a DK one, I'll give you a little bonus one tonight. We'll go with Josh Naylor.
You almost took mine. Don't take it.
That would have been nice.
I thought you were going to do it. I was like, if he does this, that's all I had prepared. So it's okay. Keep it going.
Yep. And for pitcher of the night, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that Framber Valdez actually outscores Spencer Strider.
Okay. So that's
raw DK points.
This is music to Jay Steele's ears, because who do you think he's going to be plugging that guy in once he's not on Strider and in on the game stack? So he should be loving that. I think that's going to be the setup. Josh Bell confirmed, he says. Yeah, no, I was actually going the easy way out. I had a couple, but the one was, he was talking about it earlier. He went with Bryce Harper. I did take one that I mentioned pre-show, because on FanDuel, when you land on that $3,600, Trout is right there. And I think people are going to like that matchup and the setup of it versus using the lefty. But we know, like you said, that seemingly has been something you could use from the past. So I really like that one. I liked your call from the Cubs earlier, though. You mentioned, I think it was Morel that you were talking about earlier there at the bottom of that order. So I liked him. And then the chalky one is Matt Olson. Like I said, I'm going to that. You guys, even if you're game stacking, whatever you got to figure out, you're leaving out, that's a perfect for your game stack lineup, Jay Steele. You can just get in their first baseman filled out, obvious, with Matt Olson. So he's the chalky one. I like the Morel call. I thought that's where you were going because you mentioned him on the show. I like that bottom of the Cubs order specifically. So Cubs, Braves, pitchers that you can fit in. That's where I'm going. For the pitchers, like I said, I'm going to stick to Strider. I like our guy, Jay Steele, talking about it, but I'm going to go against you on that one. If you don't play him, go to the other side. Like you said, I like your Valdez call, and you can go there. And then I don't want to go too hard because Sean will come back and own me on the next show, but like I said, if you were building that lineup out, I'd probably still be Berrios, to be honest. But the Savali call you brought up, and with the stats that we have and good reasoning, I could see it. I mean, he's bottom 2 in our pitcher ranking, so it's not like he stands out there, but I definitely think that's an angle that you could play. If you guys haven't, the final thing before we get out of here, like I said, the obvious, looks like the subscribers are still under 1,000, so just check it out. Now 990 or something like that. But if you guys can go subscribe to the channel, it will help us out. I know we get a lot of the same viewership day over day, but spread it around. Go to that welcome video under videos, put in a comment with hashtag SHIPIT. That gets you in the draw tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern on this channel. It'll be out on our Twitter. We are getting our Twitter back soon, hopefully. We're waiting. Tomorrow's like the 5th day of the 3 to 5 business days, so should be getting it back soon. But for now, myself, Hoop, Boomer, Nades, Title, everyone out there that's posting stuff out there, will have it out there for the MMA show tomorrow. It's free. It's going to be Hoop and Title talking UFC 289, and Hoop is going to be doing the draw for the annual winner of the $599 package. So check that out. Hit the like on the way out. That's going to do it for this one, guys. For Boomer, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.